Hi guys, JT here, and today I'm going to be taking you through an upcoming game, Resident Evil 4 Remake. The remake of arguably the best Resident Evil game in the franchise.
How far could he have gone?
The story. The year is 2004. You play as Leon Scott Kennedy, the protagonist from Resident Evil 2 sent to an unnamed rural village in Spain to rescue the president's daughter, Ashley Graham. From the trailer, you first arrive at a house to begin your search for Ashley. This house is presumably along the outskirts of the village like in the original game. Only this time you arrive at night instead of the daytime. Exploring the house, you discover plenty of religious iconographies, relics, corpses, and skulls. Then you find one of your escorts laying on the ground, dead. At some point you encounter one of the residents of the house with his head hanging on by a slab of flesh on his neck and some tentacles popping out of his gaping wounds. He comes for you as you relive the horrors of the 1998 Raccoon City incident. You then find photos that seem to suggest that Ashley is being held captive somewhere in the village. Before you can investigate any further, the villagers in the house find you and bust the door down. You jump through the window to get to safety. Another thing that I have to talk about is the dog that you can save at the beginning of the original game. This time around you will still find the dog, but it is dead. Some questions remain if you have not played the original. Where is the president's daughter? Why are the villagers attacking you? The most important question of all, how is the decapitated corpse still walking around? If you've played the original, Capcom has promised some changes to the story like the dog situation, so there'll be some surprises in store for you, all you Resident Evil 4 veterans.
No fucking way.
Presentation. The world of Resident Evil 4 Remake is much darker than the original. The first house that you walk into is especially different as you're presented with bones and corpses much earlier on. The graphics of this game is terrific and it really makes you feel like you're in a house that could have been real. This updated version seems to have more gore than the original with more blood and corpses around. The enemies in Resident Evil 4 Remake, the Ganados, are more human looking than most other zombies and monsters in other Resident Evil games as per the original game. Of course, until the virus in their bodies, the Las Plagas, takes over. Then they turn into abominations with tentacles replacing their heads and their heads hanging by the side of their necks. Dr. Salvador looks as menacing as always with the sack over his head, carrying a chainsaw, finding an opportunity to saw your head off. One thing that bothered me a little was how one of the female villagers looked like Marguerite from Resident Evil 7. I guess I shouldn't say bothered, but more like she looks so familiar that I keep thinking she's going to transform into a giant bug with a hive as her privates. But of course the Ganado didn't do so. The bosses look a little different from their original counterparts, with the village chief Vitores Mendez now sporting a hat, and Ramon Salazar no longer having his quirky magistrate's hat. In fact, Salazar looks even more menacing than before and closer to looking like an old man rather than a boy who's been indoors for too long. The Verdugos still standing behind him, loyal to their master, sporting their black and red robes like the original. El Gigante looks mostly the same, except more menacing and seemingly much bigger than the original. Leon and Ada look like their counterparts from Resident Evil 2 Remake, as they should, with Leon still sporting his original attire from the original game. Ashley Graham and Louis Serra have both seen some changes in their head models, as per other characters in the remakes of Resident Evil games since Resident Evil 2 Remake, and also their attire. Leon himself seems to still keep some of his charms from the original game, talking like a smartass while at the same time more grounded to the Resident Evil 2 Remake personality, where he is more serious and vulnerable.
You can stop right there.
Ada? Who are you? And what are you doing here?
My faithful disciple will show her the path.
Ashley, run!
The entire world shall overflow with his grace.
What's happening to me?
Now, abandon your body.
Leave the girl. She's lost no matter what.
Now that he has chosen death.
The gameplay. Resident Evil 4 Remake sees a modernization of the third-person perspective that it first started in 2005, with some staples that you've seen in Resident Evil games like the ability to move while aiming. If you've played the original, then the gameplay will feel very familiar, like shooting Ganados in the kneecap will open a window for you to execute a melee move on them. Guns that you can use that is shown in the trailer so far are handguns and shotguns, but I would imagine that all of the guns from the original game will make a return in this game. The shotgun looks to be as satisfying as ever to use. You can still perform Leon's melee moves once you have stunned the enemies like his infamous roundhouse kick. Now, the knife. If you've seen the gameplays of Resident Evil 4 Remake, you'll see that the knife has a durability bar on the bottom right corner of the screen. This system is very different from the original, as the original had infinite durability, so you can literally use your knife without any worry of actually breaking throughout the whole game. This time your knife can actually break like in Resident Evil 2 Remake, but you can also upgrade your knife this time with more durability or more damage. There are a few new things this time around, like the ability to crouch, sneak, and hide from enemies. You can hide behind objects and wait for the Gyarados to pass before making your move, allowing for some light stealth gameplay. And then a new feature in this game is stealth attacks. You could crouch and creep behind enemies, getting close enough to stab them with your trusty knife. This opens up gameplay quite a bit, as you get to be sneaky this time around, stabbing the Gyarados in the back rather than turning into an action game like the original. In addition, you can now parry with a knife, being able to resist or deflect attacks with a well-timed button press. You can also parry the chainsaw of Dr. Salvador with your knife, which shuts down the chainsaw for a few seconds, opening a window for you to make your escape. It seems like Dr. Salvador now acts more like Jack Baker with a chainsaw, swinging his chainsaw around like a madman that he is. Dr. Salvador can now also destroy wooden structures to block your path. The Gyarados can now grab you from the back and hold you, for their fellow Gyarados to attack you from the front while you're vulnerable. While in the original game, you can climb the bell tower to safely knife villagers who are climbing up the ladder, causing them to plunge to their death, till Dr. Salvador jumps in with you. This time around, the bell tower floor will actually collapse beneath you, forcing you to fend for yourself. Another difference is now you can use the environment to your advantage. While the cow from the original game would just stand and watch you as you kill its farmers, only to be killed itself when you stab it, this time the cow is actually useful to buy you some time. You could shoot at the lantern directly above it, causing it to fall into the cow, catching it on fire as it runs through a crowd of Gyarados in a panic, giving you some time to escape the onslaught. As per the original, you can organize your items in your attaché case, moving them around in the grid-based inventory, as opposed to the item slot system introduced in more modern-day Resident Evil games. You can also synthesize herbs and create other things like ammo by combining different materials together. The merchant also makes a return with his iconic stranger voice. You could buy weapons, weapon parts, upgrades, and first aid sprays from the merchant. You can also tune up existing weapons, sell things, or trade valuables that you've collected for special items. Some of these items include the Punisher pistol, which allows your bullets to go through a number of enemies, the laser sight, a treasure map of the location that you're in, and also the yellow herb. There seemed to be a new weapon in the merchant's shop, the bolt thrower, which seemed to act a lot like Krauser's bow from the original game. First impressions. When it was first announced that Resident Evil 4 was getting a remake, I was honestly quite disappointed, as I did not see how much more they could change Resident Evil 4, besides updating the graphics, changing the look, and some slight improvements to the third-person gunplay. In addition, I was hoping for a remake of more classic Resident Evil games like Code Veronica, which many Resident Evil fans have been asking for a long time. However, after watching the trailers and gameplay, it does look like a far darker game than the original, with more closed-in areas that make you feel claustrophobic and darker tones in general, which had me very excited. I like that there's a lot more gore and horror being infused in the Gyarados, as the villagers from the original game didn't look at all scary and just looked like normal human beings. I like that they have the villagers' heads hanging off when the Las Plagas virus does mutate from within them. They seem to have also made the Gyarados more impervious to your attacks by not reacting when they get shot. The updated looks of the boss enemies are great, especially with what they have done with Ramon Salazar. He just looks so much more menacing now than when he was like a child with shriveled skin in the original. Vitores Mendez just looks like his old self except with a wizard hat on, and they seem to have kept his mutated form the same as the original, with his spinal cord extending itself to the roof. I do wonder what other characters look like Osmond Sadler. Also, I wonder what changes they will bring to the looks of the Vertigo, the Gyarados, the U2, the Regenerator, and the Iron Maiden. They're already pretty scary in the original game. Having them updated with modern graphics with more goo and gore, wow, that would be amazing. One thing that is on a lot of people's minds though, will there be the island and Krauser? Those two parts of the original game are definitely my least favorite parts of the game. Krauser's section just seems like it doesn't belong in a survival horror game, and the island in general just feels like an action game. I did however enjoy the part where Mike shows up in a helicopter and starts shooting at the Gyarados on the island. In saying that, I still feel like that part doesn't belong in a survival horror heavy Resident Evil game. In some ways, I hope that they replace that section with something more befitting the survival horror genre. The gameplay looks more intense this time around, with more focus on the horror aspect of the game. I like that they have made the Gyarados more impervious to your attacks, as it brings the tension up when facing a whole horde of them. It used to be that when a group of Gyarados show up, I just shoot one in the knee and then roundhouse kick the entire group away before knifing everybody on the ground, then rinse and repeat. Can't do that anymore though, as the knife can actually break this time. I would imagine that the staple puzzles, finding keys to doors will still be present, and heck, I'm all for it. I actually really enjoy that aspect of Resident Evil games. I am so keen to see what other changes they'll introduce in Resident Evil 4 Remake. It is looking really good so far, and even though things seem really familiar in the remake, there are plenty of differences that make it very different from the original. Capcom has promised some changes to the story, which I'm really keen to see what they actually are. In addition, I'm also interested to see an updated version of Wesker, who appears on a portable screen that Ada carries around in the original, as we haven't seen any iterations of him since Resident Evil 5 in 2009. Can't believe that it has been 13 years since then. On another note, I hope that their next remake will be Code Veronica. I just want to see some of the offshoots being remade and introduced to modern consoles.
Show her the bag.
Ashley, run!
All in all, I'm looking forward to Resident Evil 4 Remake. I'm keen to see what other changes they are making to the various villains and maps. This game releases on the 24th of March 2023 for Steam, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and Series S. So what do you guys think about Resident Evil 4 Remake? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.